you're looking for a truck that looks as if it was designed to survive a war zone or the unexpected and rapid downfall of society, maybe even a zombie apocalypse, well then conventional logic says you should go for the brilliantly bonkers Tesla Cybertruck. Mad, isn't it? But what if I told you there was an alternative? Another brilliantly anti-apocalyptic set of wheels that might just give Elon's favourite a bit of a run for its money.
Yes, long before the Tesla Cybertruck was a twinkle in Elon Musk's eye, the Rezvani Vengeance was busy triggering double takes from anyone who came across it. Only 2 years separate them, and while both are very different cars with distinct target audiences, both have a lot in common, particularly their ability to attract an audience who simply like to flex. By the way, if you're interested in flexing in a brand new vehicle of your choosing, don't forget check out autotrader.co.uk. We've got a massive range of pickup trucks, vans and other commercial vehicles all available to buy and lease. Check out the link down below.
Today, we're in California, where they invented flexing. That's showing off, in case you're wondering, to find out the differences and similarities between these two titans. It's a clash of the flex machines, and we're going to start with the big dog, the Rezvani Vengeance.
If you're unfamiliar with the Vengeance, that's completely understandable. It's usually aimed at people who are constantly being shot at, blown up, or kidnapped. In other words, dictators and celebrities. Underneath, it's a Cadillac Escalade, but it's been completely re-engineered with a lot more features.
It was designed by a graphic artist called Milan Ivanov, who, amongst other things, specializes in creating cartoons and graphics for video games. So he connected with Rezvani to bring the Vengeance to life, and it looks like it literally fell out of a comic book. And it's littered with comic book style features. I'll show you around, shall I? First thing you notice is this enormous, solid front bumper so you can barge people out the way. You got this nice little winch here, which is powerful enough to tow 12,000 pounds. That's 5.4 tons, or around 2 Cybertrucks. And you get a couple of these nice big towing points with the Rezvani logo etched inside. Now, around the side, you get 22-inch wheels with 35-inch military-grade tires, which look fantastic. Plus, this is a great feature, bulletproof doors. And not just the doors, the glass is ballistic glass too. And it's got a unique touch. Normally, when you have bulletproof glass, it won't wind down. But Rezvani have managed to fit a more powerful motor, so it does wind down. Unfortunately, you've got to get in, turn it on, and get the electrics going in order for it to move. But look how thick that is. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that isn't even the maddest bit.
Let's say I'm driving along, flexing, and somebody wants to do me harm. On my command, the Vengeance will deliver a little surprise, 110 volts of shock therapy from its electrified door handles.
Oh, looks painful. But let's just say the bad guy is like really determined. This car also comes with actual pepper spray in the wing mirrors that you can deploy in their actual faces. I love it.
If for some reason they survive that and still want to get to you, the Vengeance has magnetic deadbolts to prevent the doors being opened by anyone that isn't the Incredible Hulk. And if they decide to try explosives, you can have either level 4 or level 6 ballistic protection, so it can survive being blown up.
But that is not all. Because the Vengeance is based on a Cadillac Escalade, it has a lot of seats, up to 8, and it comes with a few interesting accessories, including up to 8 bulletproof vests, up to 8 helmets, and up to 8 gas masks in case things get, spicy on the school run.
Fans of Mr. Beast may remember that this was the exact car that was blown up on that channel. Barring a few cosmetic repairs and the petrol cap coming loose, it managed to survive quite nicely. And speaking of spice, the Vengeance can get gassy too. Literally, the thing has a built-in smoke machine, which when you rev the engine and get the exhaust hot enough, can produce an enormous amount of smoke, leaving your enemies wondering where the hell that giant 6-ton cartoon SUV went. But is that enough to leave the Vengeance's very distant cousin, the Cybertruck, in its dust? Well, it's easy to make the assumption that Tesla's most bonkers creation yet is less impressive than the Rezvani. It's not built for war, it doesn't come with bulletproof vests and helmets as accessories, but somehow the Cybertruck still manages to look like something out of a sci-fi movie. Quite fitting, because the Cybertruck was first unveiled in November 2019 in Los Angeles, the same month, year and place that Blade Runner was set.
It is very different to the Vengeance, but somehow just as mad, maybe even madder. And I think it all comes down to the frankly absurd shape of the thing. It's all angles and points. We're kind of programmed to appreciate a car when it has lots of amazing curves, but this just rips up the rule book completely. If the Vengeance was designed by a comic book artist trying to create something to appeal to children, this looks like it was designed by children. The Cybertruck is not bomb-proof, but it is very, very rugged. Apparently, it's bulletproof and can withstand a load of other punishment, including an impact from a baseball, an impact from a baseball bat, that's fine, apparently, and even an impact from a foot. Yeah. That is definitely one of the toughest cars I've ever seen. But it is a little bit rough around the edges. Take a look at this. Up here, you can literally peel a carrot. I've never ever seen any other car do that before. And also, there's a safety issue. So check this out, right? Carrot, door, carrot destroyed. And speaking of doors, back here, that is actually closed. And you can see the panels simply don't line up. When I'm driving this car and looking in the wing mirror, it looks like the door is actually open, but it's not. If you need more space in your Cybertruck, don't worry. It is, of course, a pickup truck, and that means you get loads of room in the back. So if I hop up here, I can actually move this electrically operated tonneau cover, and it's strong too. I can hop up and it holds 300 pounds of weight. Actually makes for a pretty decent treadmill as well. Not only that, but it also has a hidden underfloor storage area, which allows you to pretty much store whatever you want. In this case, I've got a bunch of ice. Dump it in. Once that's in, you can load it up with as many drinks as you want. This makes for the perfect barbecue car. And there's even a drain plug underneath. Brilliant.
This particular Cybertruck is modified by LA-based Tesla mod company Unplugged Performance, the same team that was responsible for the world's fastest Tesla, Dark Helmet. This invincible setup is designed to take the off-road credentials of the Cybertruck to new levels, with beadlock rims that use bolts to secure the tire to the rim, allowing you to air down to as low as 5 psi for more grip off-road, plus the option of a host of other accessories planned for the future. Inside, the Cybertruck is pure Tesla, minimalist and clean. You get space for 5 passengers, 3 in the very spacious rear, which includes a dedicated screen for watching Netflix, YouTube, or controlling the ventilation. And then in the front, you have the biggest screen in a Tesla thus far, 18 inches in fact. And it's incredibly fast, responsive, and clear.
It's also got arguably the best sound system I've ever heard in any car, and that is massively high praise. It sounds phenomenal. Plus it's got all the usual Tesla extras, emissions mode, farting, romance mode, a sketch pad, and even tracks, which is like a music generator that lets you park up and create your own tunes. Okay, that's enough of that.
But as good as that sounds, the Vengeance makes a pretty decent noise of its own.
So, what we're listening to is a 6.2 litre pushrod V8, similar to the one you get in the standard Cadillac Escalade. Here, it's making 420 horsepower and 620 newton meters of torque. That's quite a lot of torque, and it does shift along quite nicely, but it isn't as quick as you might expect, because in its lightest form, without all the level 4 or level 6 ballistic protection, this car weighs 2.8 tons. But if you want to go quicker, don't worry. Rezvani have a couple of tricks up their sleeve for that.
For $55,000 extra, you can get a supercharged version of this engine making 620 horsepower. But if you got $125,000, they'll supercharge it to a whopping 810 horsepower. According to my maths, that's $320 per additional horsepower.
Do you really need a car with 810 horsepower? The answer is probably not. But Rezvani's attitude is, hey, we can, so we will. So if you're in the position of buying this car, I think you might as well, really. No matter what engine you go for, you're probably not going to want to drive too quickly in this car because it's not built for cornering. Cast your mind back to a year ago when we drove the sportiest version of the Cadillac Escalade, the Escalade V, around a racetrack. It felt a bit like you were driving a piano around the racetrack. And this car, even in its lightest form, is 2.8 tons. So it's all about just cruising along and enjoying yourself. If people get in your way, you might want to use the torque to push them along. But the point is to drive slowly so everyone appreciates the design and sees you. The cabin is pretty luxurious, as we know from the Escalade. One of the highlights is the fact that you get this lovely 3-segment display. On the right-hand side, you got all your infotainment controls. On the left, you got all your trip information. And then in the center, you got a nice, big forward-facing display that shows you the road ahead. Now, the Vengeance does have a few extra bits of bodywork, including a huge front bonnet, and that can make the visibility suffer somewhat. But Rezvani have included a couple of extra bits. In total, there are 20 cameras scattered all around this car, and you get these 2 displays up on top of the dashboard that show you the extremities of the vehicle. And that definitely reduces the chances of, running over things or people. Of course, there are also loads of Rezvani specific touches in the Vengeance, including a Rezvani logo on the steering wheel, all the aforementioned buttons, so the front and rear blinding lights, strobe lights, shocking doors, smoke screen, pepper spray. And if you look in the center compartment here, what you'll find is there's a safe. A safe for what? A gun, apparently. And then you've also got a loud hailer, and this red button is for a siren. How cool is that? And there's a second siren down here too. That is tremendous. So after you've pepper sprayed and electrocuted people, you can get on the blower and apologize to them afterwards. Yeah, sorry about that.
Flaws and downsides? Well, with the extra weight, it's clearly not as nice to drive as the car it's based on. The handling is questionable, and the thought of being in a rollover accident with the deadbolts activated whilst this car electrocutes anyone who tries to come to your aid is not something I'd want to contemplate too often.
So, what's it like to drive the Cybertruck? Probably the most overhyped car in probably ever. First impressions, I actually quite like it. This is a bit of me. I'm enjoying this. So it comes in a couple of flavors. First of all, there's the top dog tri-motor 845 horsepower Cyber Beast, which can do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Totally unnecessary for a pickup truck. And then there's a slightly more sensible dual motor car, that's the one I'm in today, which has 593 horsepower and can do 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Equally idiotic, but yeah, the power is addictive. That's fun. So it's definitely quicker than the Rezvani Vengeance, but actually the performance in a straight line isn't the first thing that you notice in this car. What you notice first is the steering, because it behaves, frankly, weirdly, because it's doing different things at different speeds. So it's the first ever car, according to Tesla, that has a completely drive-by-wire system. In other words, there's no physical connection between the steering wheel, or the yoke, and the front wheels. And in fact, the rear wheels as well, because it's got rear wheel steer. Obviously, Tesla might have forgotten that the Infiniti Q50 from about 10 years ago also had a drive-by-wire system, but I'm not going to argue with Elon Musk. I'll just tell you what the steering feels like. When you're driving at fairly normal speeds, it feels quite direct, which is what you'd expect from a Tesla. So little inputs give you quite big reactions, but then when you slow down, something really odd happens. Watch this. So look, I'll come to a stop and then I'll turn the wheel. Normally you've got to turn the wheel a couple of turns to get it to go full lock, but that is completely full lock. And not only is it turning the front wheel, but it's also turning the rears as well, and it's lightning fast. That's bonkers. And then when you back up to speed, the ratio changes again and it behaves like a much more normal car. Such a weird system, but very cool. When you're driving it quickly, it does feel a lot more athletic and nimble than the Rezvani Vengeance. It corners fairly well. It stays quite flat actually, and it's a lot of fun to drive. But you do have to remember that the Cybertruck does weigh 3 tons. So at some point, if you get a bit too enthusiastic, you're going to be carrying a bit too much speed into a corner, and then that's when you'll discover the brakes maybe aren't the sharpest in the world. So remember, this car is modified by Unplugged Performance. They call it the Up Invincible. And ironically, you do get a sense of invincibility when you're driving this car, because it kind of feels like it's quite a good off-roader, and it gives you the sense that you can literally just go off-road pretty much at any point you fancy. So look at this, yeah, here we go. Currently driving off-road, going round a tree, not a care in the world, and I'll rejoin the road, and it just soaks it up. Couple of things in this car that really annoy me. Visibility out the front is pretty useless. You've got these massive A-pillars. You do have these little quarter panels that give you some extra visibility, but the size of these pillars at the front and also the size of your wing mirrors means that it can be quite tricky to see when you're pulling out of junctions, for example. Also, when the rear tonneau cover is up, you can't see out the back. It literally blocks everything. And you've got a tiny, tiny rear view mirror here, so even when it's down, you still can't see anything, to the point where Tesla have installed a permanent feed for the rear camera directly on this 18-inch display. But that is terrible in the daytime and useless at night. It's really, really bad.
Most of the Cybertruck's weight comes from the enormous 123 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which gives the truck a range of 340 miles in the dual motor version or 320 for the Cyberbeast. Understandably, a full charge takes longer than the smaller batteries in Tesla's other vehicles, 44 minutes versus 32 minutes in something like a Model 3. Just don't ask where you're going to find a charging station in the event we do actually have a real apocalypse.
Having said all of that, I absolutely love this thing. It is super interesting. People criticize the design. They say it's a bit too weird, it's a bit too out there, but look at all these cookie cutter jelly bean shaped electric cars on the market and tell me they're interesting. Honestly, they're not. Compared to this is absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that Tesla are doing something different, and this thing attracts attention like you would not believe. If you want to make a statement and you want to attract attention and you want to flex, there is nothing better than a Cybertruck. So, which one of these two ridiculous titans should you go for? Well, if money's an issue, the obvious choice is the Tesla Cybertruck. It's only $80,000, and for that, you get a car that's bulletproof, kick-proof, bat-proof, wall-proof, and a car that attracts attention like you would not believe. However, if you want a vehicle that can help you survive being maimed and injured, while simultaneously maiming and injuring those who try to maim and injure you, there's an obvious choice. It is, of course, the Rezvani Vengeance. Which would I go for? Well, I'm afraid they're both completely and utterly ridiculous. And on that basis, I'm gonna have to have both.